Hi, I'm Bethany. Thanks for watching. This is DIY comic illustration class, and you can either follow along and do this class on your own, or you can teach a classroom of students. It is geared towards middle school to adult. If you have a younger student that is interested in comic or cartoon illustration, I would recommend that you go to the store or on Amazon, get doodle books for comic and cartoon illustration for your littler ones, just to give them the exposure. You don't have to be an artist, nor do you have to be a teacher to be able to teach this to other people. You just need to have the excitement and the ability to give the exposure to comic illustration, and that's what this video will provide. So you'll just follow along and play the portions for your students that are appropriate to them. And it's 12 weeks. My class will be taking this over a course of 12 weeks, with each class being an hour. You can condense it and give extra homework if you need it to be a shorter class in a fewer number of weeks, or you can spread it out and give everyone extra time, where they could do 2 comic strips if they wanted to. So one of 3 things will happen by doing any kind of exposure to a different kind of art form. One is that you'll find a talent and a passion in you or a student, and they will potentially become a comic illustrator, a cartoon illustrator, or an animator. And if that's the case, they will start devouring everything that has to do with this subject, and they will take it on their own and just be really excited about everything that they bring to class or that they show you, and just encourage them to do more and more. Second thing that could happen is that you find a hobby for yourself, a way to express yourself. I frequently doodle when I'm bored, or just to journal. I doodle in my journals. It's a wonderfully therapeutic thing to do, using the right side of your brain, expressing yourself. The third thing that could happen is that you don't like this at all, and that's fine. Find something that isn't watching TV that makes you happy and that you could share with other people. Again, you don't have to be a teacher to facilitate this. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Columbus College of Art and Design, but I'm not an illustrator, so I'll be doing this process along with you for the first time. You could like my videos and subscribe to my channel. That would be nice, and share it with your friends. Talk to your students about what is appropriate comic illustration and what is not. There's a lot out there that is provocative and demeaning and gross. So we're not going to touch that, hopefully, in class, and make sure your students know that, and that they need to have an adult in the room when they're on the internet looking for any kind of inspiration images. And just talk to them about internet safety, and please let their parents know that they need to be supervising their children when they're on the internet. There's plenty of product out there for you to show that is clean, is appropriate. So if you hesitate at all with something that you found, whether or not it's appropriate to show, don't do it. Just stay away. The supplies that you will need for this class to begin with are a healthy stack of comic and cartoon illustration and animation books. And you can go to the library, you can go to a discount bookstore, you can order things on Amazon, and you'll need to utilize the internet to print off specific images based on what your students need. You can have your students purchase all of their supplies, or you can do it for them. So the first thing that they will need is a 3-ring binder and a pouch to keep pencils and other supplies in, and I got these at the dollar store. They will need a regular pencil and a good eraser, and 2 different shades of colored pencil. That way, when they're tracing their images, they'll be able to see. They will also need a whole bunch of drawing paper and tracing paper, probably at least 30 pages to start with of tracing paper and drawing paper, and they need to be punched with a 3-ring hole punch, which is something else you'll need, and put into the folder. I don't like sketchbooks that don't have rings because the paper doesn't lay flat, and all of the things that they make need to be punched with a 3-ring hole punch and put in a binder, because if they are loose papers, they will lose them, the edges will get frayed and dirty, and it won't look good. You will need a thin black and a thick black Sharpie, 1 per student. They could share the thick black Sharpie. You will need masking tape, multimedia art paper that you'll have to get at either a craft store with a coupon or at an art supply store, and it needs to be at least 11 by 14 or larger. You will want to have extra drawing paper and tracing paper, and if you keep the packaging on it, you can return it if you don't use it. You will need a good pencil sharpener, either an old school, really good quality one, or an electric one. You don't want the kids to be lazy when it comes to sharpening their pencil. Eventually you will need an assortment of acrylic craft paint colors and need to get specific colors based on what your students need. You will want to have rulers or straight edges, bright and bold solid colored cardstock paper that is standard letter size. You will also need to print off at least 10 different fonts that are comic fonts from 100 or 1001freefonts.com, and make sure each one of those looks a little different. And finally, you'll need some sort of color book so that the students can pick colors when it's time for their comic. Each week I will attach links to drawings and templates, and they're all things that I either made myself or reproduction with my own hand as something that I found, so you are more than welcome and need to print them off for your class. You will also need a good assortment of colored pencils for your students. And lastly, you will need to start the week number 1, very clean jokes. The way we're going to do the storyline for this class is that we will take a joke and we will either use it verbatim or we can kind of rewrite it based on the fact that you'll have pictures explaining what's going on, and just to make it more interesting. So I went on the internet and printed off a few pages of jokes, and class number 1, the kids need to work on picking their story. So by next week they need to have finalized what their joke is going to be or what their story is going to be. And in class we will all talk about what their pictures could be, who their characters could be. Some of the kids will start sketching right away, and that's fine. But anyway, you can go to the library and you can also get joke books and have fun with that. So to start the class, to start the first 8 weeks of class, they're going to do a follow along warm up. And so I have an example of, and these will all be linked to the video. So we have the dog. They're going to draw very lightly to start with, and that's really hard for a lot of students. They'll draw number 1, they'll draw what's in red, they'll move on to number 2, they'll draw what's in red, move on to number 3, and then once they get to number 3, this should take about 10 minutes. If they have extra time, they can put details, they can do coloring. It helps just warm them up. They start talking to each other. It's comfortable. They have beautiful finished products. It's amazing what they can come up with. So here is one of my students from week number 1. This is what she did. And if they love this, they'll go home and they will show their parents. They'll keep working on it at home and be very proud of it. We are going to do a 3-frame comic. So 1, 2, 3. No more than that. That way it doesn't get too confusing or too complicated. But if they want to start sketching, they've got ideas, encourage your students that when they're inspired, not to wait, to find something they can write on and something they can write with, and get it out of their brain. Not to think, oh, when I get home I'll remember that joke, I'll remember that character, what it looked like. They need to sketch it immediately when they're inspired. So I'm going to show you, I have taken this process from start to finish. I have done it. And so this portion right here, you might want to show your students. A lot of people do better if they know where they're headed, what's their final destination. So the first thing is that you're going to pick a joke and you're going to write the storyline based on what you're interested in and have other people help you come up with the best options. So my joke, my original joke is, if you ever get cold, stand in the corner of a room for a while. They're usually 90 degrees. So you have to understand that a corner is a 90-degree angle. I suppose mine's more of an adult joke, but clean. They have to be clean. So that's my original joke. And then I decided, and look how horrible these drawings are, but you need to get it out of your brain. So I've got this lady's shivering and there's snow outside, and this guy comes and he says, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Mr. Slope says that corners are 90 degrees. And so she thinks that she should be warm." So that was my original idea, and I did Mr. Slope because I wanted it to be like a math name. And you can see as I'm drawing that I'm using words and pictures. So I'm saying, okay, her teeth are chattering and she's shivering, but that's not one of my quotes. So I showed this to one of my girls and she said, "Oh, that's just sad." So I'm like, okay, how can I make this not sad? So I kept sketching, and you'll fill lots and lots and lots of pages with sketches. But eventually I came up with, okay, she's shivering and it's still snow and there's a fan and a margarita, and she goes, "Hi, Fluffy," and he's like, what? And she said, "Mr. Slope says most corners are 90 degrees. So it went from maybe someone else making fun of her to her cat is like, "What's going on?" And her cat won't judge her and will still love her. So then I started sketching what my character was going to be. So I decided one was going to go from a person to a cat. And I wrote down words saying, look up what a cartoon would look like if it was shivering. And I had to look up beach ball, what a beach ball looked like, and what an oscillating fan looked like. And I found a picture of a cold drink. So you don't have to have everything just pop out of your brain. You're going to reference pictures, and that's something as teachers you need to do for your students throughout this whole process. So I spent some time sketching my cat and my girl that I thought, okay, if she's going to have an adult drink, and she needs to look more like a woman, not a girl. And so you just work through that process of what are they going to look like, what colors are they going to be, and how old should they look. And it needs to look like a cartoon, not like a picture of a person. If we wanted a picture of a person, we'd take a photograph, but we are illustrating. So just drawing and redrawing, and eventually we'll get to the point where you're pretty much happy with what you've got. Once you have it perfect, you will take this on a window and use multimedia paper over top of it to trace again on paper that is paintable. And my final product, once I picked my colors and painted it, is this. We will be naming our comic, and this specific one isn't called Fluff. The same way that the Peanuts characters in the Peanuts comic is named Peanuts, but the comics aren't about peanuts. So when your students finish this, they should have illustrations of different faces and these characters developed fully so that they can go home on their own and make lots of comic strips, and it would be nice if they named their comic strips. So I have my comic strip named Fluff because I named my cat Fluffy. And so here she is, she's shivering in the corner, got a beach ball and the snow and the fan, and she says, "Hi, Fluffy." And there's a question mark. Poor little Fluffy is like, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Mr. Slope says corners are 90 degrees. and he wraps her around her feet and loves her anyway. So anyway, this is what everyone is going to come up with at the end of this, and I will take you step by step through what you need to do to make this happen. So bring this excitement to your students and have fun with it. As a teacher, you can do it along with them, and continue watching my videos and have fun. Thank you.